Where is justice? Our Prime Minister is embroiled in yet another scandal, and it seems clear this is the third time he's broken ethics rules. Yet, he refuses to step down, even though he would demand others do so if they were in the same situation. Instead, it seems he forces his finance minister out and prorogues Parliament to try and sidestep the House of Commons committee investigations into the current scandal. We might ask, where is the justice? Canadian Armed Forces were sent into long-term care homes to help with COVID outbreak. They reported instances in which members spotted equipment used on both infected and non-infected patients without being disinfected, as well as rotten food, cockroach infestations, and a startling disregard for basic cleanliness. Over 1,500 seniors have died of the virus, partly because of the brokenness of our long-term care homes. Where is the justice? In the United States, over 173,000 have died from COVID-19, and over 5.5 million have been infected. And partly is due to a president who doesn't listen to health officials. And we might ask, where is justice? In North Korea, Leader Kim Jong-un and his predecessors have run the most oppressive regime in the world. Whole families have been sent to prison labor camps from which they may never be released. You can be imprisoned or even executed for possessing a Bible. And while the army and government live comfortably, the average person barely survives. Where is justice? Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko won a recent election that many in the country and most in Western democracies consider rigged. This extends his 26-year rule. But protests have broken out, and now he threatens opposition leaders with criminal charges and has tried various tactics to try and stop the protests. Where is the justice? Ahonen Mehdi, a recent graduate of Westmount Secondary School, made a series of allegations concerning racist incidents she said she witnessed or was subject to while serving as the student trustee on the HWDSB. The board has now launched an independent investigation. And this is just another of many racist incidents reported in our country in recent months. We might ask, where is the justice? Have you ever wondered why God permits the wickedness of our culture to flourish? Why doesn't God send down fire from heaven and consume those who promote such evils? Or why doesn't God put to death those who blaspheme his name? Why do evil rulers and their governments continue to prosper? Well, a prophet named Habakkuk had similar questions. Now, while the Bible provides no biographical information about this prophet, it seems he lived during the time of Manasseh. Manasseh ruled for 55 years and is remembered as Judah's most wicked king. Habakkuk complained to the Lord about the various evidences of wickedness and injustice that he observed, things that seemed to go unpunished, things such as violence, might makes right, injustice, the poor being oppressed, the justice system filled with bribes, religious and social evils such as idolatry and immorality. And he noticed law was paralyzed, it was twisted and ignored. And so Habakkuk complains to the Lord, "Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounds. Therefore the law is paralyzed and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous, so that justice is perverted. He saw the oppression of the poor by the wealthy and those in positions of power. He saw bribery and corruption among leaders in the nation. Now, years before, Amos saw similar conditions in the northern kingdom of Israel and cried out against them. Amos saw poor farmers being taxed beyond their ability, and then, when they couldn't pay, having their land seized. The wealthy bribed judges, so there was no hope of justice. Then, with their ill-gotten gain, they built expensive homes with all the luxuries of the day. And the prophet Amos proclaimed that they would not be able to enjoy those luxuries because God was bringing his righteous judgment upon them unless they repented and turned to God. They didn't listen. And within a generation, Amos's message came true when Assyria destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel and took many into captivity. Now, about a century later, Habakkuk sees similar corruption in Judah and wonders how long God will allow it to continue. God replies, "Look at the nations and watch, and be utterly amazed. For I'm going to do something in your days that you would not believe, even if you were told." The Lord informs Habakkuk that he will deal with the injustice in Judah. He will do something that no one thinks possible. Well, God often works in mysterious ways his wonders to perform. Then the Lord proceeds to give Habakkuk some details about how he would bring this about. First, God tells Habakkuk that this will happen in your days, which suggests within about a generation. Secondly, God informs the prophet that the Babylonians would be the instrument that would bring about God's judgment on Judah. At that time, at the time of Habakkuk, I should say, Babylon was not a threat. Assyria was the world power and had easily put down a revolt by Babylon in 652 BC. And that's why God said they would find it hard to believe. It would be sort of like saying Mexico is going to conquer the U.S. Now, after Manasseh and the 2-year reign of his son Ammon, 8-year-old Josiah came to the throne. Josiah became a very godly king, bringing reforms that sought to turn the nation back to the Lord. And because of his godly life and obedience to the law, God promised Josiah the delay in the judgment that had been promised. Well, Josiah died in 609 BC, and those who ruled after him all turned away from God. So, in 586 BC, the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem and took the people into exile, just as God had told Habakkuk. So in response to Habakkuk's questions about justice and questions we may raise today, God declares he will bring justice. Now we must remember that our God is not bound by the restraints of time. He dwells in eternity and views things from an eternal perspective. Jesus tells the story of a rich man and a beggar whose name was Lazarus. Lazarus suffered poverty and disease, and no one cared for him, it seemed. The rich man saw him regularly outside his gate, but did nothing to help him. It seems he didn't even speak to him. Lazarus suffered injustice, and the rich man was unjust. He cared only about himself. He closed his heart and his hand to opportunities to make a difference. Well, both men died. Lazarus went to heaven and experienced all the comforts and blessings he did not enjoy on earth. Meanwhile, the rich man found himself in hell. He suffered. He didn't suffer because he had it good on earth, but because he was unjust. He had rejected God on earth, and now God gave him his wish of a godless eternity. The rich man suffered because he closed his heart to the chance to bring justice to one who had suffered. Jesus told another story in Matthew 25, comparing people to sheep and goats. Just as a farmer will divide the livestock, so the Lord will divide people come Judgment Day. And how does he decide? True faith. Do we say we just believe in Jesus and love Jesus, or do we actually practice it? True faith in and love for Christ will demonstrate itself by our concern for the well-being of others, visiting the sick and the imprisoned, clothing the naked, feeding the hungry, welcoming the strangers are all examples of showing love to Christ. They are all means of working for justice in our land. These stories of Jesus emphasize God's desire for justice. They also demonstrate that God has appointed us to be those who bring about that justice. Before we try and blame God for injustice, we need to look at ourselves. He has called us to be his channels for justice. He calls us to overcome evil with good. So what can we do? Well, first of all, pray. Prayer should be the starting point. Pray that God would change the hearts of leaders. Pray that God would remove wicked rulers. Pray for our government leaders. My observation has been that most of our politicians actually start off with good motives and intentions. They want to make things better. But all too often they become entangled in the corruption that surrounds governing. And when they get some power, they like to hold on to it. We need to pray that they would be people of integrity, resisting the temptations of office. We should pray for those organizations and individuals who are working on the front lines to bring justice to the oppressed and disadvantaged, whether it be a community care worker, a medical worker, a homeless shelter employee, those working with agencies such as Haldeman Pregnancy Care Center or World Vision or the Bible League or Samaritan's Purse or Voice of the Martyrs and others. Secondly, live justly. In Micah 6:8, God declares, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God." And so let us examine our own lives. Do we treat others justly? Do we seek to help whenever and wherever we can? Are we quick to judge others as being freeloaders or lazy without knowing their story? Do we take time to make a phone call or stop and talk to someone who's all alone? Do we treat people fairly? Do we show love and compassion? This is the life the Lord calls us to, and we can set a good example for others to follow. Thirdly, we can speak out. We have the privilege of living in a democracy where freedom to voice our opinions and belief is there for us. When we see injustice, let's speak out. We can write government leaders. We can express our concerns to business people who may be dealing unjustly. We can encourage others when we see them working toward justice. We can call out those who are being prejudiced and racist and so on. The psalmist says, "Blessed are those who act justly, who always do what is right." And finally, get involved. There's a story of a boy walking along the beach, and he was picking up starfish which had been stranded when the tide went out, and tossing them back into the water. The man stopped and asked him what he was doing. "Oh, I'm tossing these starfish back into the ocean so they can live." "But there are thousands of them along here. You can't help them all, so what difference will it make?" Well, the boy picked up another starfish and said, "It makes a difference to this one." And then he tossed it back into the ocean. So we can help those that we can. We may not be able to help everyone, but we can make a difference for one or two. This is what the Lord says. Do what is just and right. Rescue from the hand of the oppressor the one who has been robbed. Do no wrong or violence to the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place. So, where we see an opportunity, let us put love into action. Where is justice, you might ask? It's in our hands. Justice begins with you and me. Let us act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. May God bless you.